The Wolf King's eyes swept past the mountain of tribute piled at his feet, enchanted blades that could split stone, jewels that glowed with captured starlight, sacred relics blessed by dying priests. He rejected them all with a flick of his wrist, his expression carved from winter itself. But when the trembling healer girl tried to hide what she carried behind her back, something ancient stirred in the throne room. The carved wolf above his seat began to glow. And for the first time in 100 offerings, Richard S. Schreiber leaned forward, his silver eyes locked on the small bundle she clutched like a secret she'd die to keep. Clara J. Powell had been dragged through winter mud for 3 days before they threw her at the Wolf King's feet. Her knees hit the stone floor with a crack that echoed through the great hall. Pain shot up her legs, but she barely felt it, couldn't feel anything past the roaring terror in her chest and the desperate need to keep her hands locked behind her back. Don't let them see it. Don't let them take it. Don't let him know. The throne room of the Leaken Kingdom was everything her mother's warnings had promised. Massive stone pillars rose like ancient trees, carved with wolves that seemed to move in the flickering torchlight. Banners bearing the Wolfanthorn sigil hung from vaulted ceilings that disappeared into shadow. And everywhere, guards in black armor, nobles in fine furs, advisors with calculating eyes, all of them watching her like wolves circling wounded prey. Clara forced herself to breathe. 3 days ago, she'd been wrapping herbs in her tiny cottage, preparing tinctures for the village sick. 3 days ago, her biggest worry had been whether old Miriam's fever would break. Then the royal guards had found her at the border. Trespassing on royal land, they'd said, as if the forest belonged to anyone but itself. Smuggling contraband. Suspicious behavior near sacred boundaries. She'd tried to explain. Tried to tell them she was just a healer gathering winter root near the river. But then they'd seen her mother's satchel. The way she'd clutched it. The way she backed away when they'd reached for it. And now she was here. In the court of the one man her mother had made her swear, on her deathbed, with her last rattling breath, to never, ever approach. Promise me, Clara. Promise me you'll bury it where he'll never find it. The Wolf King trusts nothing and no one. If he discovers what you carry, he'll destroy you, or worse, he'll bind you to a fate darker than death. But Clara had failed. The guards had dragged her here. And now she knelt before Richard S. Schreiber himself, fighting to keep her mother's final secret hidden. He was exactly as the stories described. Tall enough that even seated, he seemed to tower. Silver-white hair fell past broad shoulders clad in dark armor etched with runes she didn't recognize. His face could have been carved from the same stone as his throne, sharp angles, a jaw that looked like it had never softened into a smile, and those eyes. Silver like fresh snow under moonlight. Cold. Piercing. Ancient. The Wolf King studied her the way a predator studies movement in tall grass. Calculating. Patient. Absolutely certain of the kill. A nobleman stepped forward, his voice cutting through the oppressive silence. Your Majesty, this peasant was found 3 miles within the forbidden borderlands. She carried no merchant papers, no travel permits. She claims to be a healer, but... I am a healer, Clara interrupted, then immediately regretted it when every eye in the room turned to her like drawn blades. The nobleman's face flushed crimson. You dare speak out of turn before. Richard lifted one hand. Silence crashed down like a hammer. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. Behind her back, her fingers tightened around the cloth-wrapped bundle. It was warm against her palms. Warmer than it should be. And getting warmer. No. Not now. Please not now, A healer, Richard said. His voice was deep, controlled, with an edge that suggested he rarely needed to raise it. From which village? Thornwick, your majesty. Clara kept her eyes lowered, just as her mother had taught her. Never look a wolf directly in the eyes. I've lived there all my life. I tend the sick, help with births, set broken bones. Then why, Richard interrupted softly, were you found at the sacred boundary? That forest is forbidden to all but the royal hunt. The penalty for trespass is death. Clara's throat went dry. I didn't know how far I'd traveled. I was following the winter route. It only grows near running water, and the river. The river runs for miles in the opposite direction of Thornwick. Trapped. He'd caught her in the lie without even trying. Clara's mind raced. I got lost. Lost. Richard's silver eyes hadn't left her face. For 3 days. In winter. Without supplies. Without dying. Someone in the crowd whispered, which? The bundle behind her back pulsed. Just once. But Clara felt it like a heartbeat against her spine, warm and alive and entirely too loud in the supernatural sense. Richard's eyes narrowed. He'd felt it too. Somehow, he'd felt it. What are you hiding? He asked quietly. Clara's blood turned to ice. Nothing, your majesty. Liar. The word cut like a blade. You've had your hands behind your back since you entered this hall. You're clutching something so tightly your knuckles are white. So I'll ask you once more, healer. He leaned forward, and the torchlight caught the silver in his eyes, making them almost glow. What are you hiding? Nothing, Clara whispered. I swear, The bundle pulsed again. Harder this time. And this time, light leaked through the cloth, just a sliver of gold-white radiance that illuminated Clara's hands for half a heartbeat before she could smother it. But half a heartbeat was enough. Gasps rippled through the court like wind through wheat. Nobles stumbled back. Guards' hands flew to their weapons. Someone cried out, dark magic. Another voice, sharp with fear, she's brought a cursed object. Clara's mind went blank with terror. This was it. This was how she died. Not in her cottage surrounded by herbs and healing, but in a stone hall full of strangers who'd already decided she was guilty. But Richard Schreiber didn't move. He simply sat there, staring at the spot where the light had been, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, so slowly it felt like the world held its breath, he stood. The Wolf King stood for no one. The court knew it. Clara knew it. Every tribute-bearer who'd come before had been rejected while he remained seated, unmoved, above them all. But now he rose to his full, terrifying height, and the carved wolf above his throne began to glow with the same gold-white light that had leaked from Clara's bundle. The hall erupted into chaos. Nobles shouting over each other. Guards advancing with spears raised. Advisors yelling conflicting orders. But Richard's voice cut through it all like thunder, silence. Every sound died. He descended the 3 steps from his throne, each footfall deliberate. Deadly. When he reached Clara, he towered over her kneeling form like a mountain given shape. Show me, he commanded. Please, Clara whispered. Her whole body trembled. Please, I didn't mean. Show me. His hand reached toward her. The moment his fingers grazed her shoulder, the bundle exploded with light. Not metaphorically. Not gently. Pure, blinding, ancient radiance burst from the cloth like a contained sun finally released, flooding the entire throne room with brilliance so intense that nobles cried out and covered their eyes. The carved wolf above the throne roared, actually roared, with a sound that shook dust from the rafters. And in that moment of chaos and impossible light, Clara felt the relic in her hands wake up fully for the first time. It sang. Not with sound, but with something older, a vibration that thrummed in her bones and set her teeth on edge and made her blood feel like it was catching fire in her veins. When the light finally faded, Clara found herself still kneeling, gasping for air, her hands now visible and empty of the cloth wrapping. The relic lay exposed between her and the Wolf King. It was a stone, roughly the size of her fist, carved into the shape of a wolf's head crowned with thorns. And it glowed from within, pulsing with that same living warmth, like a heart torn from some ancient beast and given form. Every person in the room stared at it in absolute horror. Because they recognized it. Clara didn't know its name, but she could feel the weight of its history pressing down like a physical thing. This was old. This was sacred. This was something that should have been buried, forgotten, destroyed. Richard S. Schreiber stared at the relic. Then at Clara. Then back to the stone. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper, yet it carried to every corner of the room. "I've seen that light once before." His silver eyes lifted to meet hers, and for the first time, Clara saw something other than cold calculation in them. Fear. Actual fear. "In my father's crown," he finished. "The night he died." The implications crashed over the court like a tidal wave. This wasn't just a relic. This was the relic. The wolf stone of the first king. The artifact that had been lost for 2 centuries. The object that prophecy claimed would only wake for. "Seize her," Richard commanded, his voice hardened back into ice. "Lock her in the North Tower. No one touches her. No one speaks to her. And no one," his gaze swept the room like a blade, no one touches that stone except me. Guards surrounded Clara instantly, hauling her to her feet even as she tried to process what was happening. Her mind screamed protests, explanations, pleas, but her mouth couldn't form words. As they dragged her away, she looked back once. Richard S. Schreiber stood alone in the center of his throne room, staring down at the glowing wolfstone with an expression that looked almost like grief. Behind him, the carved wolf on his throne had gone dark again. But Clara could have sworn its eyes followed her all the way out of the hall. Clara had never wanted this. Never asked for destiny or prophecy or ancient magic. All she'd ever wanted was to honor her mother's dying wish, bury the relic where the Wolf King would never find it, and live a quiet life among the herbs and healing. But some fates don't care what you want. Some fates choose you anyway. And 3 days ago, when the royal guards found her at the border, Clara's quiet life ended. Now, locked in a tower with a relic that shouldn't exist and a king who rejected everything the world offered him, Clara was about to discover why her mother had been so afraid. Why she'd run. Why she'd hidden. And why, despite everything, she'd kept this one impossible secret. The truth about who Clara really was, Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Are you Team Wolf King or Team Healer? Wolf face crown, and what do you think that relic just did to them? I need to know your theories because moving forward, things are about to get so much more complicated. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss what happens when Clara finally learns what that stone actually chose her for. Dizzy ***. The North Tower wasn't a prison, it was a tomb with windows. Clara stumbled as the guards shoved her through the heavy iron door, catching herself against the cold stone wall. The chamber was circular, sparse, lit only by a single narrow window that let in pale moonlight. A bed. A table. A chair. Nothing else. Not even a fireplace to ward off the winter chill seeping through the walls. The door slammed shut behind her. The lock turned with a finality that made her stomach drop. She was alone. Clara pressed her back against the door and slid down until she sat on the floor, her legs finally giving out. Her whole body trembled, from cold, from fear, from the lingering sensation of that impossible light burning through her hands. What had she done? The question circled her mind like a vulture. She'd meant to bury the relic. Had planned every step of the journey. Sneak to the forbidden forest, find the sacred grove her mother had described, dig deep, and leave that cursed stone where no one would ever find it. Instead, she'd been caught. Dragged before the one person in the entire realm who should never have seen it. And now. Now the Wolf King knew it existed. Clara buried her face in her hands, fighting back tears. Her mother had warned her. Had made her promise on her deathbed, voice weak but urgent, never let him find it, Clara. The Wolfstone chooses its bearer, and if Richard S. Schreiber discovers you carry it, he'll either kill you or bind you to a fate worse than death. Promise me. She'd promised. And she'd failed. A soft knock on the door made her jump. Stand away from the entrance, a guard's voice called through the wood. Clara scrambled to her feet, backing toward the window as the lock turned. The door opened just wide enough for someone to slip through, then closed immediately. A woman stepped into the moonlight. She was older, perhaps 50, with silver-streaked brown hair pulled into a severe bun. She wore the dark robes of a court scholar, and her eyes, sharp and intelligent, studied Clara with an intensity that made her want to shrink into the stones. Sit, the woman said, gesturing to the chair. Who are you? Someone who needs answers before the council convenes at dawn. The woman moved to the table, producing a small leather journal from her robes. I am Magistrate Alara Thornfield, Chief Historian to the Leaken Crown. And you, Clara Powell, have brought something into this castle that shouldn't exist. Clara's throat tightened. I don't know what you mean. Don't insult my intelligence. Alara's voice was sharp but not unkind. I've spent 40 years studying the artifacts of the first king. I know what that light means. I know what that stone is. She leaned forward. The question is, do you? Clara opened her mouth. Closed it. Finally shook her head. My mother gave it to me. Before she died. She said to bury it and never speak of it to anyone. Your mother was wise. Alara's expression softened slightly. That stone is called the Heart of the First Pack. It was forged in the earliest days of the Leaken Kingdom, when magic ran thick as blood through these lands. The first Wolf King used it to unite the scattered packs, to bind them under one rule. Then why hide it? Why make my mother run? Because the heart doesn't just symbolize power. Alara's eyes darkened. It chooses. Every generation, the stone selects one person, someone with the bloodline and the gift, to serve as the Wolf-Seer. A mystic who can channel the ancient magic, interpret visions, protect the throne from threats ordinary eyes cannot see. Clara's blood ran cold. No. That's not, I'm just a healer. I don't have any gifts. I can't. Can't you? Alara interrupted. Tell me, Clara. When you touched that stone tonight, what did you feel? Everything. She'd felt everything. The pulse of ancient magic like a living heartbeat. The weight of centuries pressing down on her shoulders. And something else, something darker. A vision of blood and betrayal and a throne stained with death. But she couldn't say that. Couldn't admit that when the light had exploded through the hall, she'd seen something in the brilliance. A glimpse of the future. A warning. Someone in that court meant to kill the Wolf King. I felt nothing, Clara lied. Alara's knowing look suggested she didn't believe a word. The Wolf-Seers were hunted to extinction 200 years ago. There was a purge. A rival faction feared their power and systematically eliminated every bloodline carrier they could find. Your mother's disappearance, her insistence on hiding, that makes sense now. She was protecting you. From what? From this. Clara gestured to the locked door, the tower, the castle beyond. From a destiny you never asked for. From a king who's spent his entire reign refusing to trust anyone. And from whoever in this court still fears what the Wolf-Seers represented. Clara's mind reeled. This couldn't be real. She was nobody. A village healer who grew herbs and set bones and helped women birth their children. She wasn't special. Wasn't chosen. Wasn't. The memory hit her like a physical blow. Her mother, 3 weeks before she died, feverish and delirious, they'll come for you, little wolf. When the stone wakes, they'll come. Hide it. Bury it deep. Don't let them see what you are. At the time, Clara had thought it was just the fever talking. Now she knew better. What happens to me? Clara whispered. If I'm this seer. If the stone chose me. What does the king do? Clara's expression turned grim. That depends entirely on Richard S. Schreiber. The last Wolf-Seer served at the side of his grandfather. They say she could see threats before they materialized, could read the hearts of courtiers, could channel the ancient pack magic in ways that made enemies flee without a battle. She paused. They also say Richard's father executed her for treason when Richard was a boy. Locked her in silver chains and burned her alive. The air left Clara's lungs. Why? No one knows. The records were destroyed. But Richard saw it happen. He was 10 years old, and he watched his father kill the woman who protected their bloodline for 30 years. Clara's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Some say that's why he trusts no one. Why he rejects every offering, every alliance, every attempt at connection. Because the last person his family trusted betrayed them. Or was betrayed by them, Clara thought but didn't say. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Heavy. Deliberate. Moving with the confidence of someone who didn't need to announce themselves. Clara stood quickly, tucking her journal away. Remember this, Clara Powell, the council will demand your execution at dawn. They'll call you a spy, a witch, a threat to the realm. Your only hope is Richard himself. If he believes the stone chose you legitimately, if he thinks you might be useful, he'll protect you. And if he doesn't? Clara's silence was answer enough. The door opened without preamble. Richard S. Schreiber filled the doorway, still in his armor, silver hair catching the moonlight. His eyes found Clara first. Out. The magistrate bowed and slipped past him without another word, leaving Clara alone with the Wolf King. He stepped inside. The door closed behind him, but he didn't lock it. That small detail felt somehow more threatening than chains would have been. He wasn't worried about her escaping. Wasn't worried about her at all. Richard crossed the small space in 3 strides, stopping close enough that Clara had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Tell me everything, he said. Who gave you the heart? How you came to possess it? And why, his voice dropped dangerously low, you thought you could bring a sacred relic into my kingdom and hide it. Clara's mouth went dry. I didn't want to bring it here. I was trying to bury it. Where? The Forbidden Forest. My mother said there was a grove, sacred ground, where? Your mother. Richard's eyes narrowed. What was her name? Margaret Powell. Something flickered across his face. Recognition? No, something darker. Margaret Ashwood. Clara blinked. No. Powell. That was her. Her married name. Richard turned away, moving to the window. Margaret Ashwood was the Wolf-Seer's apprentice. She disappeared 23 years ago, 3 days after the execution. We assumed she'd fled the realm or died in the wilderness. He looked back at Clara. She had a child with her when she ran. A daughter. The world tilted. You knew my mother. Everyone knew your mother. Richard's expression was unreadable. She was destined to be the next Wolf-Seer. But she vanished before she could complete her training. Before she could bond with the heart. He moved closer again, and this time Clara couldn't back away, the wall was already against her spine. Tell me, Clara. When the heart activated tonight. When it burned in your hands and flooded my hall with light. What did you see? She should lie. Should say nothing. Should protect herself from whatever fate awaited those who told the Wolf King uncomfortable truths. But those silver eyes pinned her in place, and the words spilled out before she could stop them. Blood. Betrayal. A blade in the dark. Her voice shook. I saw someone in your court planning to kill you. Someone you trust. Someone close. The silence stretched so long Clara thought she might shatter from the tension. Then Richard smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the expression of a predator who just confirmed the prey was exactly as dangerous as he'd hoped. The council convenes at dawn, he said softly. They'll vote to execute you. Every single one of them will call for your death. He turned toward the door. I'm going to refuse. And by doing so, I'll confirm to the traitor in my court that you saw something. That you know something. That you're dangerous. Clara's heart hammered. You're using me as bait. I'm using you as a tool. Richard paused at the door, glancing back. That's what Wolf-Seers are, after all. Tools to protect the throne. Weapons against those who plot in shadow. His hand rested on the door handle. Tomorrow, you'll kneel before the full council. You'll tell them exactly what you told me. And we'll see which one of them flinches. And if they all call for my death anyway, then you'd better hope the heart chose correctly. Richard opened the door. Because if you're wrong about what you saw, if you're lying, or mistaken, or simply mad, I'll give them exactly what they want. He left without another word. The lock turned. And Clara was alone again in the dark, with nothing but moonlight and the terrible knowledge that she'd just become a piece in a game she didn't understand. Somewhere far below, in the heart of the castle, the Wolfstone pulsed once in its locked chamber. A heartbeat. A warning. A promise. Dawn came too quickly. Clara hadn't slept. How could she, knowing that in a few hours the entire council would gather to decide whether she lived or died? Instead, she'd spent the night pacing the small tower room, her mind replaying Richard's words over and over. You're a tool. A weapon. Bait. The sky outside her window had just begun to lighten when the door opened again. This time, 2 guards entered carrying something wrapped in black velvet. The king commands your presence in the private interrogation chamber, one said. His voice was neutral, but his eyes held pity. You're to bring this with you. They set the velvet bundle on the table and left. Clara stared at it. She didn't need to unwrap it to know what lay inside. She could feel it, a gentle thrumming that resonated in her bones, like a second heartbeat just out of sync with her own. The heart of the first pack. Her hands trembled as she reached for the velvet. The fabric was soft, expensive, completely unlike the rough cloth her mother had used to wrap it all those years ago. Someone, Richard, probably, had treated the relic with reverence. Or caution. Clara pulled back the velvet. The Wolfstone gleamed in the early morning light. Up close, she could see details she'd missed during the chaos in the throne room. The wolf's head was carved with incredible precision, every strand of fur visible, every thorn in the crown sharp enough to draw blood. But it was the eyes that caught her attention, two tiny crystals embedded in the stone that seemed to watch her with an intelligence that made her skin prickle. Slowly, carefully, Clara reached out and touched it. The world disappeared. She was standing in her mother's cottage. No, not standing. Kneeling. She was 10 years old again, small hands clutched in her mother's weathered ones, tears streaming down both their faces. "Promise me, Clara." Her mother's voice was weak, ravaged by the coughing sickness that had been slowly killing her for months. "Promise me you'll never go to the Leaken King. Never let him know what you are." "I promise, Mama." "But why? Why can't I?" "Because they kill what they fear." Her mother pressed something wrapped in cloth into Clara's hands. "The Wolf-Seers were slaughtered because we saw too much. Knew too much. The throne fears those who can see its secrets." She coughed, blood speckling her lips. "This stone has been in our family for generations, passed from mother to daughter, hidden from those who would use it or destroy it. When I die, you must bury it in the sacred grove. Let it sleep. Let our bloodline finally rest." "But Mama, what if?" "No." Her mother's grip tightened with desperate strength. "Listen to me, little wolf. The heart chooses its bearer. And once it chooses, there's no going back. You'll see things no one should see. Feel things that will break you." The last Wolf-Seer died screaming, Clara. Burned alive while the king watched. Tears spilled down her mother's cheeks. "I won't let that be your fate. Promise me you'll bury it. Promise me you'll run if anyone ever discovers what you are." "I promise." The memory shattered. Clara gasped, jerking her hand away from the stone. But the damage was done. The heart had awakened fully now. It pulsed with brilliant light, filling the room with a silver-white glow that made the shadows dance like living things. And it was singing. Not with sound, but with something deeper, a vibration that thrummed through Clara's entire body, setting her nerves on fire and making her blood feel like molten gold in her veins. Images flashed through her mind too fast to process: ancient wolves running beneath a full moon, a crown forged in starlight, a throne built on bones, a king dying while his son watched, a woman burning. The door slammed open. Richard strode in, eyes blazing with alarm. "What did you do?" "I didn't, I just touched it, Anne." "Step away from it. Now." But Clara couldn't move. The light had wrapped around her wrists like chains, binding her to the stone. The singing grew louder, more insistent, and now she could hear words within it. Ancient words in a language she'd never learned but somehow understood. Chosen. Bound. Seer. Witness. Guardian. Clara. Richard crossed the distance between them in 2 strides. "Release it." "I can't." He reached for her arm, probably intending to pull her away by force. But the moment his fingers touched her skin, everything changed. The heart exploded with light. Not the gentle glow from before. This was a detonation of pure magical energy that sent both of them staggering backward. The light spiraled outward, wrapping around Clara and Richard like silver ribbons, binding them together in a cocoon of ancient power. Clara felt Richard's heartbeat as if it were her own. Felt the curse that lived in his blood like poison. Felt the weight of a crown he wore like chains. Felt his fear, buried deep, hidden beneath layers of ice and control, that he would die alone and unmourned just like his father. And she knew, with terrifying certainty, that he could feel her too. The door burst open. Guards poured in, weapons drawn, then froze at the sight before them. The Wolf King and the village healer, suspended in a sphere of silver-white light, the heart of the first pack hovering between them, pulsing in perfect rhythm with both their heartbeats. "Goddess preserve us," one guard whispered. "A dual bond. That's impossible, another breathed. Dual bonds only form between rulers and their destined counterparts, a third finished, voice shaking. Between those chosen by the ancient magic to share a throne. The light began to fade. Clara's legs gave out and she collapsed, hitting the stone floor hard. Her vision swam. Every nerve ending felt scorched, raw, too sensitive. Strong hands caught her before her head could crack against the stones. Richard knelt beside her, his expression thunderous. But his hands were gentle as he steadied her, and Clara could still feel the echo of his heartbeat in her chest. Out, Richard commanded the guards. His voice was deadly calm. All of you. Now. Your Majesty, if the dual bond has formed, the council must be informed. I said out. The words came out as a growl, not quite human, not quite wolf. Something in between that raised the hairs on Clara's arms. The guards fled. The door slammed shut, leaving them alone in the aftermath of impossible magic. Richard released her carefully, rising to his full height. He stared down at the heart, which now lay dormant on the floor between them. Then at Clara. Then back to the stone. That wasn't supposed to happen, he said quietly. Clara forced herself to sit up despite the exhaustion weighing down her limbs. What wasn't supposed to happen? Dual bonds died with the old magic. They haven't manifested in 200 years. Richard's jaw clenched. They only form when the ancient power recognizes two souls as meant to rule together. To share not just a throne, but a destiny. But I'm nobody. I can't. You're a Wolf-Seer. Richard's silver eyes pinned her in place. Or you will be, once you complete the bonding ritual with the heart. And apparently, the ancient magic has decided that you and I, he cut himself off, turning away sharply. This complicates everything. Clara struggled to her feet, using the wall for support. I don't want to rule anything. I didn't ask for this. None of us asked for the fates we're given. Richard moved to the window, his back rigid. But we're bound now. Linked. I can feel your fear like it's my own. And you, he glanced back at her. You can feel the curse in my blood, can't you? She nodded, unable to lie. That's what a dual bond does. It strips away all pretense. All armor. We're vulnerable to each other in ways that could destroy us both. His expression hardened. Which is why no one can know. Not yet. Not until we understand what this means. The guards already saw. The guards will be silent, or they'll be dead. The casual way he said it sent ice down Clara's spine. The council meets in 2 hours. You'll stand before them. You'll tell them what you saw. And you'll make them believe you're nothing more than a frightened girl who stumbled into power she doesn't understand. That's exactly what I am. No. Richard crossed back to her, and this time when he looked at her, Clara saw something dangerous in his eyes. Something that looked almost like hope. You're the first Wolf-Seer born in 2 centuries. The heart chose you. And whether you like it or not, Clara Powell, he reached down and picked up the wolf stone, holding it out to her. You're now the only person in this kingdom who might be able to see the traitor before they strike. Clara stared at the stone. At the king. At the impossible choice before her. Finally, slowly, she took the heart from his hand. The moment her fingers closed around it, warmth spread through her chest. The stone seemed to settle against her skin like it belonged there. Like it had always belonged there. Richard's eyes widened slightly. It's bonded to you completely. You can feel it, can't you? Clara nodded. The heart pulsed gently now, a comfort rather than a threat. And when she looked up at Richard, she could still sense the faint echo of their connection, the dual bond that had linked their souls in ways she was only beginning to understand. "Good," Richard said quietly. "Then keep it close. Because the council chamber is full of predators, and you just became both the most valuable piece on the board, and the most vulnerable." He left without another word. Clara stood alone, clutching the heart of the first pack to her chest, feeling its warmth seep into her bones. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, her mother had been wrong about one thing. Maybe the Wolf King wasn't the monster she needed to fear. Maybe the real monsters were the ones who smiled while sharpening their knives. The heart pulsed once against her chest. A warning. A promise. A beginning. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you think the dual bond is destiny or a curse? And who do you think the traitor in Richard's court is? Drop your theories. Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens when Clara faces the council. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. The council chamber was a predator's den dressed in silk and stone. Clara stood at its center, hands bound in silver chains that burned against her skin, the heart of the first pack hidden beneath her dress where it pulsed against her sternum like a second heartbeat. Around her, 12 of the most powerful nobles in the Leaken kingdom sat in a semicircle of ornate chairs, their faces ranging from curious to hostile to murderous. Richard sat apart from them all, elevated on a smaller throne at the room's head. His expression was carved ice, revealing nothing. But Clara could feel him through the dual bond, a low hum of controlled fury and something else. Calculation. He was hunting, even while sitting still. "This is madness, your majesty." Lord Aldrich Vane rose from his seat, his scarred face twisted with indignation. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, decorated with military honors, his voice carrying the weight of someone used to being obeyed. "You cannot seriously be considering allowing this peasant to live. She brought a forbidden relic into our kingdom. She trespassed on sacred ground. She's either a spy or a witch, possibly both." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. "She's a threat to the realm," added Lady Seraphine, her jeweled fingers drumming against her armrest. "The heart of the first pack has been lost for 2 centuries. How convenient that some village girl suddenly appears with it, claiming innocence." "Claiming nothing," snapped Lord Matthias, the youngest of the council at perhaps 30. "She tried to hide it. If she were a spy, wouldn't she have announced it? Demanded an audience? Used it as leverage? Or," Aldrich interrupted, his voice sharp, "she's cleverer than we're giving her credit for. Perhaps the entire performance was designed to gain the king's attention. To worm her way into his confidence." His eyes locked on Clara with undisguised contempt. "After all, what better way to assassinate a king than to make him believe you're his prophesied savior?" The word hung in the air like a blade. Clara's chains clinked as she clenched her fists. "I'm not trying to assassinate anyone. I was trying to bury the relic. My mother made me promise." "Your mother?" Aldrich's laugh was cruel. "Margaret Ashwood. The apprentice who fled like a coward rather than serve her kingdom. You expect us to trust the daughter of a deserter? She wasn't a coward." The words burst from Clara before she could stop them. "She was protecting me from people like you, people who'd rather kill what they don't understand than." "Enough." Richard's voice cut through the room like a whip crack. "Clara Powell stands accused of trespassing and possession of a sacred relic. These are the facts we judge. Not her mother's choices. Not speculation about her intentions." Aldrich's jaw tightened, but he bowed his head. "Of course, your majesty. Forgive my passion. I speak only out of concern for your safety." Something cold slithered down Clara's spine. The way Aldrich said those words, so smooth, so practiced. And beneath it, she felt something else. A wrongness. The heart pulsed against her chest, and suddenly she saw him differently. Saw the calculation behind his concerned expression. The way his eyes kept flicking to the other nobles, measuring their reactions. He's afraid, she realized. Afraid of me. Of what I might see. The question remains, Lady Seraphine continued, what do we do with her? Even if we believe her story, which I don't, she's activated a relic that's been dormant for generations. That kind of power is dangerous. Unpredictable. Kill her, said Lord Brennan flatly. He was ancient, easily 70, with milky eyes that somehow still missed nothing. Humanely, quickly, but kill her nonetheless. Better to eliminate the threat than risk whatever chaos she might bring. More murmurs of agreement. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. They were going to vote for her death, and Richard would have to choose, protect her and lose his council's support, or sacrifice her to maintain stability. Through the bond, she felt his response before he spoke. Cold. Resolute. Immovable. No, Richard said simply. The chamber erupted into protests. Your Majesty, you cannot be serious. This is unprecedented. The risk is too great. I said no. Richard's voice dropped to something barely human. The growl beneath it silenced every objection. Clara Powell will remain under my protection until we understand what the heart's awakening means. She will be confined, guarded, monitored. But she will not be executed based on fear and speculation. Aldrich shot to his feet. Your Majesty, I must protest. As your chief military advisor, I cannot in good conscience. Then resign. Richard's silver eyes locked on Aldrich with predatory focus. If you cannot follow your king's command, Lord Vane, I'm sure someone else would welcome the position. The threat landed like a physical blow. Aldrich's face flushed crimson, but he bowed stiffly. As you command, Your Majesty. But Clara saw it, the flash of pure hatred in his eyes before he masked it. And worse, she saw his hand drift to his belt, where a small token hung. A raven carved from black stone. The heart blazed hot against her chest. Vision slammed into Clara like a fist. She saw Aldrich in a darkened room, kneeling before a figure cloaked in shadow. Saw gold change hands. Saw a map of the castle spread across a table, with red marks indicating guard rotations, weak points in the defenses, the king's private chambers. Saw Aldrich's lips form words, when the moon goes dark, we strike. Clara gasped, stumbling. The chains caught her weight as her legs threatened to give out. Richard was on his feet instantly. Take her to the North Tower. Now. Guards moved forward, but Richard waved them back, crossing to Clara himself. He gripped her arm, ostensibly to steady her, but Clara felt the question through the bond. What did you see? She couldn't answer. Not here. Not with Aldrich watching like a hawk, his hand still resting on that raven token. Council dismissed, Richard commanded. We reconvene tomorrow to discuss security protocols. The nobles filed out, some casting pitying glances at Clara, others, like Aldrich, looking satisfied. As if her collapse proved she was weak. Unstable. Exactly the threat they'd claimed. Only when the chamber emptied did Richard release her arm. Tell me, he said quietly. Aldrich. Clara's voice shook. He's planning something. I saw him meeting with someone in shadow. There was gold, and maps of the castle, and, she looked up at Richard. He said, when the moon goes dark, we strike. That's tomorrow night. The new moon. Richard's expression didn't change, but Clara felt the fury through their bond. Volcanic. Controlled only through decades of practice. Are you certain? The heart showed me. I don't know how I know, but I do. He's the traitor. Or one of them. Richard was silent for a long moment. Then, come with me. We need to talk somewhere they won't hear us. He led her not to the tower, but to his private study, a stark room lined with maps and weapons and books bound in leather. He locked the door, then turned to face her. Remove the chains. Clara blinked. What? The silver burns you. I can feel it. He produced a key and unlocked the manacles. They fell away, leaving red welts on her wrists. If you're going to help me catch a traitor, I need you focused. Not in pain. Why are you trusting me? Clara rubbed her wrists, watching him warily. Your council wants me dead. It would be easier to. I haven't been able to shift in 3 years. The confession hung between them like a knife. Clara stared at him. What? Richard moved to the window, his back to her. During the border wars, I was hit with a cursed blade. Dark magic, forged specifically to cripple Leakin abilities. I survived, but the curse remains. I can't transform. Can't access half my power. Can't, he cut himself off, jaw tight. The kingdom doesn't know. If they discovered their wolf king can't actually become a wolf, the throne would be vulnerable. Challenges would come from every direction. But you're still the strongest. Strength isn't enough. Not in this world. He turned to face her, and Clara saw something raw in his expression. Vulnerability he clearly hated showing. When you touched me earlier. When the dual bond formed. I felt the curse crack. Just slightly. But enough to know that you, or the heart, might be able to break it. Understanding dawned. That's why you're protecting me. Not because you believe in the prophecy or the dual bond. Because you need me. Yes. No apology. No softening. Just brutal honesty. I need you alive if I'm going to survive what's coming. And you need me alive if you want to survive the council. He stepped closer. So we use each other. You help me break this curse and identify the traitors. I keep you alive long enough to do it. Clara should have been insulted. Should have felt like the tool he'd called her. Instead, she felt the weight of truth settle over her like armor. The new moon is tomorrow night, she said. That's when Aldrich plans to strike. What do we do? Richard's smile was sharp as broken glass. We give him exactly what he wants. A vulnerable king, alone in his chambers, with only a powerless village girl for company. His eyes glinted silver. And when he comes for me, we'll be waiting. Clara's hand drifted to the heart beneath her dress. It pulsed steadily, no longer frantic. As if it approved of this plan. As if it had been waiting for exactly this moment. There's something else, she said quietly. When I had the vision, I saw Aldrich with others. Soldiers hidden somewhere in the castle. He's not working alone. Then we find them before tomorrow night. Richard moved to his desk, pulling out maps of the castle. Starting now. Tell me everything you saw. Every detail, no matter how small. Clara moved to join him, and as their shoulders brushed, she felt the curse in his blood pulse once. Testing the dual bond. Testing her. The game had begun. And somewhere in the castle, Aldrich Vane met with his hired soldiers, adjusting his plans now that the king had shown his hand by protecting the seer girl. Change of plans, he told them, his voice cold as winter. The girl dies first. Tonight, while she sleeps. Then the king will have no one to warn him when we come. He fingered the raven token at his belt, its black stone eyes seeming to watch everything. Prepare the poison, he commanded. By dawn, the Wolf King's savior will be nothing but a corpse. The castle archives smelled of dust, old parchment, and secrets that had been buried for generations. Clara followed Magistrate Clara through rows of towering shelves, each one packed with leather-bound volumes and scrolls so ancient they seemed ready to crumble at a touch. Somewhere above them, thunder rumbled. The storm that had been threatening all day was finally breaking. "Here," Clara said, stopping before a section in the deepest corner of the archives. The shelves here were different, locked behind iron gates, protected by wards that made Clara's skin prickle with uncomfortable energy. The restricted records. Histories the Crown would prefer stayed forgotten. Richard stood behind them, arms crossed, his presence a constant weight in the small space. He'd insisted on coming himself rather than waiting for Alara's report. After Clara's vision of Aldrich's betrayal, he wasn't taking chances with information. Clara produced an ornate key and unlocked the gate. It swung open with a groan of protesting metal. She moved directly to a specific shelf, as if she'd known exactly where to look, and pulled down a volume bound in midnight blue leather. "The bloodline registry of the Wolf-Seers," she said, laying it carefully on a nearby table. "Last updated 203 years ago. Before the Purge." Clara's hands trembled as Clara opened the book. The pages were yellowed with age, covered in elegant script that flowed like art across the parchment. Names. Dates. Family trees that stretched back centuries. The Wolf-Seers were an ancient bloodline, Clara explained, her finger tracing down a particularly long genealogy. They emerged during the founding of the Leaken Kingdom, when magic was as common as breathing. These mystics could channel the ancient wolf relics, interpret visions, sense threats to the crown before they materialized. She glanced at Clara. They were the throne's greatest protectors. And its greatest threat. Threat? Clara whispered. Power always threatens those who don't possess it. Richard's voice was hard. My great-grandfather's council feared the Wolf-Seers. They argued that mystics who could read the future might manipulate it. Might use their visions to control the throne rather than protect it. So they killed them. Clara's stomach turned. All of them. All they could find. Clara turned several pages, her expression grim. It happened over the course of 5 years. Assassinations made to look like accidents. Families that disappeared in the night. By the time anyone realized it was systematic genocide, it was too late. She stopped on a page near the end of the registry. Only a handful escaped. This is one of them. Clara leaned forward, reading the name written in fading ink. Margaret Ashwood. Born in the year 1342 of the New Age. Daughter of Elena Ashwood, Wolf-Seer to King Aldrich III. Apprenticed at age 15. Disappeared in 1367 under circumstances unknown. Below the entry, someone had written in different ink, clearly added later, presumed dead. Bloodline ended. That's my mother, Clara breathed. But the dates, that would make her 223 years old, Richard finished. Wolf-Seers don't age like normal humans. The magic sustains them, extends their lives far beyond natural limits. Your mother lived for over 2 centuries before the curse finally caught up to her. Clara's mind reeled. She'd thought her mother was perhaps 50 when she died. Old, worn down by hard living and the coughing sickness. But 200 years. That meant everything Clara knew about her life was a lie. The cottage, the village, the quiet existence as a healer, all of it constructed to hide what her mother really was. She ran when the purge began, Clara said softly. Changed her name, hid her abilities, lived as a human for over 2 centuries. All to protect the one thing that mattered most. She looked at Clara with something like pity. You. The last Wolf-Seer born in 200 years. The words hit Clara like a physical blow. No. I'm not, I can't be. The heart doesn't choose randomly. Richard moved closer, and Clara could feel his intensity through the dual bond. It recognized your bloodline. Your mother's power, dormant in your veins. When you touched it, you awakened abilities that have been sleeping since birth. But I don't know how to use them. I can barely control the visions, and I don't understand half of what I see. Clara's voice cracked. My mother never trained me. Never told me the truth. She just made me promise to bury the heart and pretend none of this existed. Because she loved you, Clara said quietly. And she knew what this life would cost you. Thunder crashed overhead, closer now. The storm was directly above the castle. Clara pressed her hands against the table, trying to steady herself. Everything she thought she knew about her mother, about herself, about her simple life in Thornwick, all of it was crumbling. Built on lies meant to protect her, yes, but lies nonetheless. She doomed me, Clara whispered. By hiding the truth, by not training me, she doomed me to stumble blind into this fate. No. Richard's hand covered hers on the table. The touch sent warmth through the dual bond, steadying her even as the world spun. She gave you 23 years of peace. 23 years of normalcy. That's 23 more years than any Wolf-Seer before you ever got. Clara looked up at him, surprised by the gentleness in his voice. My father executed the last Wolf-Seer when I was 10 years old, Richard continued, his silver eyes distant with memory. I watched them chain her in silver and burn her alive. She screamed for hours before she finally died. I can still hear it sometimes, when the castle is quiet. His jaw tightened. Your mother spared you that. Whatever else she did or didn't do, she spared you from a childhood of chains and terror and being used as a weapon before you could understand what it meant. The truth of it settled over Clara like a heavy cloak. Her mother hadn't lied to hurt her. She'd lied to give her a chance at something resembling a normal life. Even if it meant Clara would be unprepared when the truth finally came. What do I do now? Clara asked, her voice small. You learn, Clara said firmly. These archives contain everything the Wolf-Seers knew. Their training methods, their techniques for controlling visions, their understanding of the relics and how to channel their power. She pulled down several more volumes. It won't be easy, and it won't be fast. But if you want to survive what's coming, you need to understand what you are. Clara nodded numbly. The heart pulsed against her chest, warm and insistent. Then the vision hit. No warning. No gentle slide into the sight. Just sudden, violent immersion. Clara gasped, her knees buckling as the world dissolved into blood-red chaos. The throne room. Night. Torches casting wild shadows across stone walls. A figure in royal armor collapsed on the throne, blood pouring from a wound in his chest. Silver hair matted with gore. Silver eyes glazed and empty. Richard, dying. Soldiers in black surrounding him, their faces hidden behind masks. But one stood apart, directing the others. Clara strained to see his face, to identify him, but shadows clung to him like a cloak. Only his chest was visible, where a crest gleamed in the torchlight. A raven carved from black stone. The same token Aldrich wore at his belt. But as Clara watched, another figure emerged from the shadows behind the throne. Someone she hadn't seen before. Someone who moved with authority, who gestured and made the masked soldiers obey. The true mastermind. Clara tried to focus on his face, desperate to see who it was. But the vision fragmented, splintering into pieces that cut like glass. Blood on stone. A crown rolling across the floor. The heart of the first pack cracked and dark, its light extinguished. And her own body, crumpled at the base of the throne, her eyes open and unseeing. Clara came back to herself screaming. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. Richard held her against his chest, his voice sharp with command as he barked orders at Clara. Get water. And something to write with. She needs to record this before she forgets. I won't forget, Clara gasped. Her whole body shook with aftershocks from the vision. Blood. So much blood. You were, on the throne, dying. Richard's grip tightened. Breathe. Focus. What else did you see? The raven crest. Aldrich's token. But he wasn't alone. Clara looked up at Richard, terror making her voice shake. There's someone else. Someone behind him, pulling the strings. I couldn't see his face, but he's the real threat. Aldrich is just a pawn, Richard finished grimly. Which means the conspiracy goes deeper than we thought. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the archives in stark white light. Thunder followed immediately, so loud it shook the building. The heart blazed against Clara's chest, pulsing so violently now that it burned. She cried out, clutching at it through her dress. What's happening? Clara moved closer, her face pale. The storm, Clara managed. The heart is reacting to the storm. It's showing me, another pulse, this one almost painful. Tonight. The attack isn't tomorrow during the new moon. It's tonight. Now. They're already inside the castle. Richard was moving before she finished speaking, drawing the sword at his hip. Where? The East Wing. Near your private chambers. They think you're alone. I left a decoy. Richard's smile was savage. A guard in my armor, standing watch by the window. They'll think they have an easy target. He turned to Clara. Lock the archives behind us. Let no one in or out. If Clara's vision is accurate, we're about to have traitors everywhere. Wait. Clara grabbed his arm. In the vision, you died. I saw you die, Richard. If we go there now, then we change the future. Richard's silver eyes blazed with determination. That's what Wolf-Seers do, isn't it? See threats so they can be stopped. So we stop this one. Together. The dual bond flared between them, and Clara felt his absolute certainty. His refusal to die according to someone else's plan. She pulled the heart from beneath her dress, letting it hang visible for the first time. It glowed like a captured star, pulsing in rhythm with the storm outside. Together, she agreed. They ran through the castle corridors as lightning turned the world white and thunder shook the very stones beneath their feet. And somewhere in the East Wing, Aldrich's hired assassins moved into position around the decoy guard, not knowing that the real Wolf King was coming for them. Not knowing that the Wolf-Seer they'd planned to poison was still alive, still armed with visions they couldn't hide from. The heart pulsed one final time, violent and urgent. The storm had arrived. And with it, blood would be spilled on ancient stone. Comment below and tell me, do you think they'll stop the assassination, or is this exactly what the real mastermind wants? Who do you think is pulling Aldrich's strings? Drop your theories because Chapter 6 is about to get intense. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you catch the next part when Clara's visions finally reveal the face behind the conspiracy. They reached the East Wing just as the first scream tore through the corridor. Richard's decoy guard, a young soldier named Petron who'd volunteered for the dangerous duty, burst from the private chambers, blood streaming from a gash across his shoulder. Behind him, 3 figures in black moved like shadows given form, their blades gleaming in the torchlight. Your Majesty, run! Petron shouted, then collapsed as one of the assassins throwing knives found his back. Richard's roar shook the stone walls. He launched himself forward, his sword a silver arc in the darkness. The first assassin went down before he could react, Richard's blade opening his throat in a spray of crimson. The other 2 scattered, one fleeing deeper into the chambers while the other turned to face the Wolf King. "Clara, stay back," Richard commanded, circling his opponent. But Clara wasn't looking at the fight. Her eyes were locked on the chamber doorway, where more figures were emerging. Not assassins. Council members. Aldrich at their front, his expression one of carefully constructed shock. "Your Majesty. Thank the goddess you're safe. We heard fighting and came as quickly as," Aldrich's words died as he took in the scene. "The dead assassin. The wounded guard. Richard's bloodied sword. And Clara, standing in the corridor with the heart of the first pack glowing like a beacon against her chest." "How convenient," Richard said coldly, not taking his eyes off the remaining assassin, "that you arrived exactly when the attack occurred, Lord Vane." Aldrich's face paled. "Your Majesty, you cannot possibly think." "I think many things." Richard drove his sword through the second assassin's chest in one brutal motion. The man crumpled without a sound. "But we'll discuss them in council. At dawn. Where everyone can hear Clara's vision of tonight's events." The threat was clear. Whatever Clara had seen, whatever she knew, would be revealed publicly. No shadows to hide in. No plausible deniability. Aldrich's hand drifted to the raven token at his belt. His eyes found Clara's across the bloodied corridor. She saw murder in them. "Of course, Your Majesty," Aldrich said smoothly. "I look forward to hearing what the girl claims to have seen." He turned and left, the other nobles following. But Clara could feel it through the heart, the panic beneath his controlled exterior. The desperate recalculation of plans gone wrong. He would move faster now. More recklessly. Tonight had been a warning shot. The real attack would come soon. Dawn broke cold and merciless over the Leaken kingdom. Clara stood once again in the council chamber, but this time she wore no chains. Richard had ordered her free, and the magistrates had reluctantly obeyed. She stood at the room's center while the 12 council members assembled, their expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. Aldrich sat in his usual place, perfectly composed. But Clara noticed the way his fingers drummed against his armrest. The way his eyes kept flicking to the exits. He was trapped, and he knew it. "We convene to hear testimony regarding last night's attack," Richard announced from his throne. His voice was ice and iron. "Clara Powell, Wolf-Seer to the crown, will share the visions the heart has shown her. And this council will decide how to proceed." "Your Majesty," Lady Seraphine interrupted, her jeweled fingers glittering as she gestured dismissively. "Surely we cannot base decisions of state security on the ravings of an untrained girl. Visions can be misinterpreted. Imagined. Even fabricated. The heart does not lie," Magistrate Alara said firmly from her position near the wall. "It shows truth, past, present, and possible futures. If Clara has seen treachery, we ignore her at our peril. Or we acknowledge that an untrained mystic might see shadows and call them threats," Lord Brennan countered. "I mean no disrespect to the old ways, but relying on visions over evidence is how kingdoms fall." "Then let us hear what she's seen," Richard said quietly. "And judge for ourselves." All eyes turned to Clara. The heart pulsed against her chest, warm and insistent. She could feel it pulling at something deep inside her, awakening the sight her mother's bloodline had carried for generations. "Tell them," Richard commanded. Clara took a breath and let the heart take her. The world dissolved. She was standing in the throne room, but it wasn't now. It was night, illuminated only by scattered torches that cast wild shadows across the stone. The air tasted of blood and smoke. Richard knelt on the throne steps, silver hair matted with gore. A blade protruded from his chest, ornate, curved, unmistakably noble-made. Blood poured from the wound in rhythmic pulses that matched the slowing beat of his heart. Soldiers in black surrounded him, but they weren't common assassins. These wore partial armor bearing noble house crests. A coordinated strike by multiple families, not a lone conspiracy. And standing above Richard, hands still gripping the dagger's hilt, was a figure wearing the ceremonial robes of a council member. Clara strained to see the face, desperate to identify the killer. The figure turned, and the vision shattered. New images flooded in, faster now, overwhelming. Clara saw them all at once. The heart of the first pack, cracked and bleeding light onto the throne room floor. Herself, chained in silver, burning as the last Wolf-Seer had burned. The castle walls breached by foreign soldiers wearing the colors of the eastern kingdoms. Richard's head mounted on a spike at the border. The Leaken kingdom torn apart by civil war. All of it stemming from one moment. One betrayal. One blade in the dark. Clara tried to hold on to the vision, to see the killer's face clearly. She pushed deeper into the sight than she'd ever gone before, ignoring the pain building behind her eyes. The heart blazed against her chest, searing hot, feeding her power she didn't know how to control. Just a little further. Just a glimpse of. There. The killer's face emerging from shadow. Features she recognized. A name forming on her lips. Pain exploded behind Clara's eyes. She screamed, the sound tearing from her throat as something vital ruptured inside her skull. Her vision went red, then black, then red again. When she could see, she realized she was on her knees. Something warm dripped from her nose. Blood. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Nobles shouting. Guards moving forward. Clara rushing to Clara's side with a cloth pressed to her bleeding nose. What did you see? Richard was there, his hand on her shoulder, his voice cutting through the noise. Clara, what did you see? She tried to speak, but her tongue felt thick. The name had been right there, clear as day, and now it was fragmenting like mist in sunlight. Betrayal, she managed to gasp. Multiple houses. Not just Aldrich. Others. A coordinated strike. They're going to, she coughed, more blood spattering the stone. They're going to kill you in the throne room. At night. With a ceremonial blade. When? Richard demanded. I don't know. Soon. Days maybe. I saw. Clara's eyes found Aldrich across the chamber. He'd gone perfectly still, his face a mask of stone. The raven crest. I saw it clearly. And others. Noble houses banded together. Aldrich rose slowly. Your Majesty, this is absurd. The girl is clearly unwell. She's bleeding from a magical overexertion and spouting accusations based on fever dreams. She named your crest specifically, Richard interrupted coldly. Many houses use bird imagery. The raven is hardly unique. Aldrich's composure was cracking. This is a transparent attempt to sow discord among your loyal supporters. Can't you see? She's the real threat. An untrained Wolf-Seer with uncontrolled visions, bleeding from magical strain, she's dangerous. Dangerous, echoed Lady Seraphine nervously. Your Majesty, perhaps Lord Vane has a point. These visions are clearly harming the girl. And if she can make accusations based on unclear images. I vote for immediate execution, Lord Brennan said flatly. Not out of cruelty, but necessity. She's too unstable. Too powerful. Too likely to cause exactly the kind of division we're seeing right now. More voices joined the call. Not all of them, Lord Matthias and a few others stayed silent, but enough. A tide of fear and suspicion that threatened to drown Clara where she knelt. She looked up at Richard through blood-blurred vision. Felt his fury through the dual bond, hot and terrible and barely restrained. Your Majesty, we must vote, Aldrich pressed. For the safety of the realm. The vote was called. Hands raised. Clara watched in numb horror as 7 of the 12 council members voted for her death. A majority. Richard rose from his throne. When he spoke, his voice was soft. Deadly. No. Your Majesty, the council has voted. Touch her, Richard said quietly, and I will burn this hall to the stone. I will end every bloodline represented here. I will salt the earth where your houses stood and make it so that history forgets you ever drew breath. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop 10 degrees. She is under my protection. She is Wolf-Seer to the crown. And she is the only person in this kingdom who can see the blade coming for my throat. Richard's silver eyes swept the council like a scythe. So if you want her dead, you'll have to go through me first. Who wants to try? No one moved. No one spoke. The threat hung in the air like a drawn blade. Finally, Aldrich bowed. As your Majesty commands. Though I fear this decision will divide the kingdom. Then let it divide. Richard moved to Clara, helping her to her feet with surprising gentleness. At least I'll know where everyone stands. He guided Clara from the chamber, leaving the council in stunned silence. Behind them, Clara heard the whispers beginning. Some praising the king's loyalty. Others questioning his judgment. The kingdom fracturing along fault lines that had been hidden until now. You shouldn't have done that, Clara said once they were in the corridor. You've made enemies of half your council. They were already enemies. Richard's jaw was tight. They just hadn't shown their teeth yet. You forced them into the open. And now they'll move faster. More desperately. Good. Richard's smile was sharp as broken glass. Desperate people make mistakes. And when they do, we'll be waiting. But as they walked back through the castle, Clara couldn't shake the final image from her vision. The one she hadn't shared with the council. In the moment before the killer struck, Richard had turned. Had looked directly at his murderer. And the expression on his face hadn't been surprise. It had been recognition. Betrayal. Someone he knew. Someone he trusted. Someone close enough to destroy him. The heart pulsed against Clara's chest, and she knew with terrifying certainty, the next few days would determine whether the Leaken kingdom survived or fell into chaos. And somewhere in the castle, in a locked room where no loyal ears could hear, Aldrich Vane met with his co-conspirators. The plan changes, he said coldly. We don't wait for the new moon. We don't wait for perfect conditions. His hand rested on the raven token at his belt. Tonight, the Wolf King dies. And the Seer girl burns with him. The emergency council session was called for sunset. Clara stood behind Richard's throne as the nobles filed in, each one eyeing her with suspicion or hostility. The afternoon had been a flurry of preparation, Richard posting additional guards, moving loyal soldiers into key positions, preparing for the attack he knew was coming. But he'd insisted on this meeting. Insisted on gathering the full council one more time. You're baiting them, Clara had said when he told her his plan. You're giving them exactly the opportunity they want. Yes, Richard had replied simply. And you'll be there to see who takes it. Now, standing in the rapidly darkening hall with torches being lit along the walls, Clara felt the heart pulse warning against her chest. Something was wrong. The air tasted of copper and smoke even though no fire had been lit. The shadows seemed too deep, moving independently of the flickering flames. This council is convened, Richard announced, his voice carrying through the chamber, to address the accusations made this morning and determine our path forward. Aldrich rose immediately. Your Majesty, with respect, I believe this meeting is premature. Tensions are high. Perhaps we should allow time for cooler heads. Sit down, Lord Vane. The command cracked like a whip. Aldrich sat, but Clara saw his hand move to his belt. To the raven token. A signal. The accusations are serious, Richard continued. Treason. Conspiracy. Planned regicide. And while I understand the Council's concern about relying solely on visions, I cannot ignore. The first torch fell. Not by accident. Not from wind or weak mounting. It simply dropped from its sconce as if released by invisible hands, landing in a pool of oil that shouldn't have been there. Fire exploded across the floor in a wall of flame. Nobles screamed, scrambling back from the sudden inferno. Guards rushed forward with buckets, but more torches fell. More oil ignited. Within seconds, half the chamber was ablaze, thick smoke billowing toward the vaulted ceiling. Through the chaos, Clara saw them emerge. Assassins, dropping from the rafters where they'd been hiding all along. Black-clad, masked, armed with crossbows and curved blades that gleamed with something oily and wrong. Poisoned. The blades were poisoned. Protect the king, someone shouted, but the guards were scattered, separated by walls of flame that cut the chamber into isolated sections. 3 assassins landed near Clara. She stumbled backward, her back hitting the throne. The heart blazed against her chest, searing hot, but she had no weapon, no way to defend herself. The first assassin lunged. The heart exploded. Pure wolf light erupted from the stone, a blast of silver-white energy that caught the assassin mid-leap and threw him backward into the flames. He screamed once, then went silent. The other 2 hesitated, their masked faces turning toward each other with visible uncertainty. Whatever they'd been told to expect, it wasn't this. Clara pressed her hand against the heart, feeling its power surge through her veins. She didn't know how to control it, didn't understand the mechanics of the magic, but instinct guided her. She pushed the energy outward, imagining a shield, a barrier, anything to keep the blades away. Light crystallized in the air around her, forming a dome of translucent energy. The assassin's blades bounced off it with ringing impacts that sent sparks scattering. Across the chamber, through the smoke and fire, Clara saw Richard. He stood at the center of a circle of bodies, 4 assassins already down, their blood pooling on stone. His sword moved like liquid silver, every strike precise and lethal. But there were too many. More kept coming, pouring through doors that should have been guarded, appearing from shadows that should have been empty. This wasn't just an assassination. It was a coordinated military strike. Richard! Clara screamed. He turned at her voice, silver eyes finding hers through the chaos. And in that moment of distraction, an arrow flew. It should have killed him. Should have buried itself in his throat where his armor didn't protect. But something happened. Something impossible. Richard's hand moved faster than human speed, catching the arrow mid-flight. His eyes flared brilliant silver, not just reflecting light, but generating it from within. When he opened his mouth to roar, fangs gleamed. The curse was breaking. Clara felt it through the dual bond, centuries of dark magic splintering like ice under pressure. The wolf inside Richard, caged for 3 years, was clawing its way free. His fingers elongated into claws. His shoulders broadened, armor straining. When he moved again, it was with the preternatural speed of a lichen in partial shift. The assassins nearest him died before they could scream. But the partial transformation was costing him. Clara could feel his pain through the bond, the curse fighting back even as it broke, poison warring with his blood. Clara, run! The voice came from her left. A guard, one of Richard's most loyal, a veteran named Corwin, stumbled toward her through the smoke. Blood poured from a wound in his side. They're coming for you specifically. You have to. An assassin's blade punched through his back and out his chest. Corwin collapsed, blood bubbling on his lips. Run, he gasped one final time. Clara's shield flickered. The heart was draining her, pulling energy she didn't know how to replenish. She couldn't hold it much longer. She ran. Not away from Richard, but toward him, dodging through flames and fighting. If she could reach him, if they could stand together, the dual bond might give them both strength. She made it halfway before someone stepped into her path. Lord Matthias. The young council member who defended her earlier. His sword was drawn, but not raised against her. Instead, he grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a fallen pillar. "Stay down," he hissed. "They're targeting anyone near the king. If you want to help him, stay alive." Through a gap in the smoke, Clara saw the throne. Saw Richard surrounded by a ring of bodies, his partially shifted form covered in blood, some his own, most not. He was magnificent and terrible, every inch the Wolf King of legend. But he was tiring. The curse was still there, still fighting, draining him even as he broke free of it. And then the nobles stepped forward. Not all of them. But enough. Aldrich emerged from the smoke, his sword drawn. Behind him came Lady Seraphine, Lord Brennan, and 3 others. Council members. Trusted advisors. Traitors. "Did you think I worked alone?" Aldrich called to Richard over the chaos. "Did you think this was just one disgruntled lord? You've been surrounded by enemies for years, Your Majesty. We've been patient. Careful. Waiting for the perfect moment." Richard's growl was barely human. "Cowards. Hiding behind masks and poison." "Pragmatists," Aldrich corrected. "You're too strong to face in open combat. Too dangerous to challenge directly. So we weakened you first. The curse wasn't an accident of war, Richard. It was a gift. From us. From our allies in the Eastern Kingdoms who want your throne. And now that the curse is breaking." Richard's claws flexed, dripping blood. "What's your plan now?" Aldrich smiled. It was the smile of a man who'd already won. "Now we finish what we started." He raised his hand. The assassins who'd been fighting independently suddenly moved with coordinated precision, forming a tightening circle around Richard. Herding him back toward the throne. Toward a specific spot on the floor where the stone was slightly darker. Where runes had been carved and filled with something that gleamed wetly in the firelight. A trap. A magical trap designed to catch a Leakin. No. Clara surged forward, but Matthias held her back. "You can't help him by dying," he said urgently. "Clara, listen to me." Richard saw the trap a second too late. His foot touched the runed stone, and silver chains erupted from the floor, wrapping around his legs, his arms, his throat. Not physical chains, these were made of pure magical energy, burning against his skin with the same light as the curse that had crippled him. He roared, thrashing against the bindings. The partial shift reversed as the chains suppressed his Leakin nature, forcing him back into human form. Helpless. Aldrich walked forward slowly, almost casually, drawing a dagger from his belt. The blade was ornate, ceremonial, exactly as Clara had seen in her vision. "I want you to know," Aldrich said conversationally, "that this isn't personal. You're actually a decent king. Strong. Fair enough. But you're also the last of your line, and the Eastern Kingdoms have offered us better terms. New territories. Greater power. All we had to do was deliver them your head." He raised the dagger. Clara screamed, trying to tear free from Matthias's grip. The heart blazed against her chest, desperate to help, but she was too far away, too drained, too. The dagger fell. But not toward Richard's heart. At the last second, Aldrich adjusted his angle, driving the blade into Richard's shoulder instead. Richard gasped, more in surprise than pain. The blade burned where it entered, dark magic seeping into his bloodstream. "I lied," Aldrich said softly. "It is personal. You rejected my sister's marriage proposal 5 years ago. Called her unsuitable. She killed herself over the shame." He twisted the blade. "So I'm not going to give you a clean death, Your Majesty. This blade is cursed. The same curse we used before, but stronger. It will eat you from the inside out over days. You'll lose your Leaken nature completely. Become fully human. Weak. Pathetic." He pulled the blade free and stepped back. "And then, when you're powerless and broken, I'll let the Eastern Kingdoms decide how to kill you. Maybe they'll burn you like your father burned that Wolf-Seer. Poetry, don't you think?" Richard collapsed, the magical chains dissolving as their purpose was complete. Blood poured from his shoulder, black and oily with curse poison. Through the dual bond, Clara felt everything. The curse spreading through his veins. His strength bleeding away. His wolf nature howling in rage as it was caged once more. She felt him dying. "Richard!" Her scream tore through the chamber. Aldrich turned toward the sound, his eyes finding Clara behind the pillar. "Ah yes. The seer girl. Don't worry, you're next. Can't have you warning anyone about our plans." He gestured, and assassins moved toward Clara's position. Matthias stood, placing himself between them and Clara. "Run," he said quietly. "I'll hold them as long as I can. Save the king. You're the only one who can. I don't know how. You're a Wolf-Seer. Figure it out." The assassins reached them. Steel clashed. Matthias fought with desperate courage, giving Clara precious seconds. She ran. Not away. Toward Richard's collapsed form, sliding to her knees beside him in a pool of his blood. His silver eyes found hers, already clouding with pain. "Clara. Run. Please. Shut up." She pressed her hands against his wound, the heart blazing between them. "I'm not leaving you. The curse. I know. I can feel it." Through the dual bond, through the heart, through her awakening Wolf-Seer abilities, she could feel exactly what the cursed blade had done. It was eating him alive, turning his Leaken nature against him. But she could also feel something else. A thin thread of possibility. A chance. The heart hadn't chosen her randomly. It had chosen her because her bloodline could channel ancient magic. Could heal what others couldn't. Could break curses that shouldn't be breakable. Clara closed her eyes and let the heart take over completely. Power flooded through her, more than before, more than she thought possible. It poured from the relic into her hands, into Richard's wound, into the curse itself. The darkness fought back. She felt it resisting, a living thing that wanted Richard dead. So she fought harder. Around them, the battle raged on. But Clara heard none of it. Felt none of it. Her entire world narrowed to the pulse of magic between her hands and Richard's fading heartbeat. "Live," she commanded. "Live. Live. Live." The heart detonated with light. The light consumed everything. Clara felt herself dissolving into pure energy, her consciousness fragmenting across time and space as the heart of the first pack channeled power through her that no mortal body was meant to contain. She was everywhere and nowhere. Past and present colliding. She saw the first Wolf King standing on a battlefield littered with bodies, raising the heart above his head as it blazed like a second sun. Saw him forge the Leaken kingdom from warring packs, binding them together with magic older than memory. She saw generations of Wolf-Seers kneeling before the throne, their hands on the heart, channeling visions that saved kings from poison, betrayal, war. She saw her mother as a young woman, barely 20, touching the heart for the first time. Saw the moment Margaret Ashwood realized what the relic would cost her and made the choice to run rather than serve. And she saw Richard as a boy, standing in this very chamber while flames consumed a woman in silver chains. Saw his father's face, cold, merciless, as he ordered the execution. Saw 10-year-old Richard's eyes go dead as he learned that power meant sacrifice. That trust meant vulnerability. That love was a weapon others would use to destroy you. The visions crystallized into a single moment of choice. The heart was offering Clara a path forward. She could channel its power into Richard, break the curse, save his life. But it would cost her. The magic was too much. Too wild. Using it like this, without training, without preparation, would burn her out from the inside. She might not survive. The heart pulsed, waiting for her decision. Clara didn't hesitate. She drove every ounce of power she possessed into Richard's dying body. The curse screamed. It was a living thing, she realized, not just dark magic, but a sentient entity designed to feed on leaken nature, to corrupt and consume from within. It had been slowly killing Richard for 3 years, and now it fought desperately to finish what it started. Clara fought back with everything she had. Ancient wolf magic flooded Richard's veins, scouring away the curse like fire burning through rot. She felt his leaken nature surge in response, recognizing the power of the first king, responding to a call it couldn't refuse. The curse shattered. Richard's body convulsed. His back arched off the blood-slicked stone as transformation ripped through him, not the partial shift from before, but the full manifestation of his true nature. Bones cracked and reformed. Muscles expanded. Silver fur erupted across his skin as his body doubled in size. His face elongated into a wolf's muzzle filled with fangs like daggers. Claws extended from his fingers, each one sharp enough to tear through steel. When Richard's eyes opened, they blazed with pure silver light, the eyes of the Wolf King in his truest form. And he was magnificent. 8 feet tall, covered in silver fur that seemed to glow from within, radiating power that made the air itself tremble. This was what the Leaken rulers had been before the curse. Before weakness. Before compromise. This was a king. Richard's roar shook the entire chamber. It wasn't rage, it was triumph. Power. Freedom after 3 years of being caged in human form. Aldrich stumbled backward, his face pale with terror. No. That's impossible. The curse should have. Richard's clawed hand wrapped around Aldrich's throat, lifting him off the ground like he weighed nothing. Should have killed me. Richard's voice was deeper now, resonating with inhuman harmonics. You underestimated 2 things, Aldrich. He squeezed, just enough to make the traitor choke. The strength of the old magic. And the power of someone who chooses loyalty over survival. He threw Aldrich across the chamber. The Lord crashed into a pillar hard enough to crack stone, then crumpled to the floor, unconscious or dead. The remaining assassins and traitorous nobles tried to flee. They didn't get far. Richard opened his mouth, and silver-white fire poured out. Not normal flame. This was wolf fire, the ancient magic of the first pack given physical form. It swept across the chamber in a wave of brilliant light, consuming everything in its path. Assassins burned to ash in seconds. The magical traps designed to cage Richard melted like wax. Even the physical flames that had been destroying the chamber were snuffed out, replaced by cleansing wolf light that burned away corruption but left loyal servants untouched. It was beautiful and terrible. Clara watched through rapidly dimming vision as Richard moved through the chamber, a silver blur of claws and fury. Every traitor who'd raised arms against him fell. Every conspirator who'd plotted in shadows was dragged into the light. Justice delivered with claws and fangs. But Clara barely saw the end of it. The power she'd channeled was eating her alive from the inside. Every nerve felt scorched. Every breath was agony. The heart against her chest had gone from warm to searingly hot, burning through her dress to brand itself against her skin. She'd given everything to save him. Now there was nothing left. Her vision tunneled. The world reduced to a pinpoint of light that was rapidly fading to black. The last thing she saw was Richard's massive form turning toward her, silver eyes widening with alarm. Then she was falling, the stone floor rushing up to meet her. She never felt the impact. Clara woke to gentle rocking and the sound of rain. For a moment, she thought she was back in her cottage in Thornwick, safe in her small bed while a storm passed overhead. But the surface beneath her was too soft. The blankets too fine. And there was a warm presence nearby that made the dual bond hum with quiet contentment. She opened her eyes. She was in a bed, an enormous four-poster draped with dark curtains. Candles burned on nearby tables, casting warm light across richly appointed chambers. Richard's private rooms, she realized. She'd been brought to the king's own quarters. Richard sat in a chair beside the bed, watching her with those silver eyes. He was human again, dressed in simple clothes, his shoulder bandaged where Aldrich's cursed blade had struck. But he looked different. Stronger. The shadows that had haunted his expression for as long as she'd known him were gone. "You're awake," he said quietly. Clara tried to sit up. Pain lanced through her entire body, and she gasped, falling back against the pillows. "Don't move." Richard's hand caught hers, his touch gentle. "The magistrate says you burned through years of your life force in minutes. You should be dead. But I'm not. Because the heart protected you at the last moment. It absorbed some of the damage, channeled it into the relic itself rather than letting it destroy you completely." He held up the wolf stone. It hung from a silver chain in his hand, and Clara saw immediately that it had changed. A crack ran through its center, and its glow was dimmer than before. "You broke it. Saving me broke the most powerful relic in the kingdom." Clara stared at the damaged stone. "I'm sorry." "Sorry?" Richard's laugh was incredulous. "Clara, you saved my life. Broke an unbreakable curse. Revealed a conspiracy that would have destroyed the kingdom. And you're apologizing for damaging a stone? It was your father's. Your grandfather's. It's been in your family for. It's a tool." Richard set the heart on the table beside the bed. "You are not. You're the Wolf-Seer. The firstborn in 2 centuries. The woman who chose to burn herself out rather than let me die." His silver eyes held hers. "Why?" Clara didn't know how to answer that. The truth was too complicated, too bound up in the dual bond and the visions and the certainty that had gripped her in that moment that Richard's death would mean more than just the fall of a king. "Because the kingdom needs you," she said finally. "The kingdom needed you too. You could have let me die and fled. Found safety somewhere the council couldn't reach. Instead, you gave everything." His hand tightened around hers. "That kind of loyalty is rare. Perhaps I've been surrounded by traitors so long I forgot what it looked like." "What happened?" After you collapsed." Richard's expression darkened. "I finished what you started. Aldrich is dead. So are 4 other council members who conspired with him, along with 17 assassins and 3 Eastern Kingdom spies who'd infiltrated the castle guard." He paused. "Lord Matthias survived. He fought to protect you even knowing it would probably kill him. I've promoted him to head of the council. And the curse? Gone." Richard released her hand and stood, moving to the window. Rain streaked the glass, turning the world outside into gray shadows. "For 3 years, I've felt it eating at me. Caging the wolf inside. Making me weak." He looked back at her. Now I can shift freely. Fully. The curse is completely broken. Because of the dual bond, Clara said. The heart used our connection to channel the magic. It wouldn't have worked if we weren't. She stopped, unsure how to finish. Bound, Richard finished for her. Linked in ways that go deeper than any marriage or alliance. The heart recognized us as a pair. Two halves of something that was meant to be whole. He returned to the chair beside her bed. I didn't ask for this. Didn't want it. For years, I've refused every connection, every vulnerability. And then you appeared, trying to hide a relic behind your back, and everything changed. Clara felt tears burning in her eyes. I didn't want this either. I just wanted to bury my mother's secret and live quietly. I know. Richard's voice softened. But we don't get to choose the fates that choose us. We only get to decide what we do with them. He reached for the heart and held it out to her. Even damaged, it pulsed with warmth when Clara's fingers touched it. The magistrate says the crack can't be repaired by normal means, Richard said. But that it might heal over time, bonded to the Wolf-Seer it chose. To you. He placed the chain around her neck. This is yours now, Clara. As much as you're mine. As much as I'm yours. The heart settled against Clara's chest like it had always belonged there. Through the dual bond, she felt Richard's certainty. His acceptance of what they'd become to each other. What happens now? She asked. Now we rebuild. The council needs new members. The kingdom needs to know their king is whole again. And you, Richard's slight smile held something almost like warmth. You need to learn how to be what you are. What you were always meant to be. The magistrate has already begun preparing a training regimen. Apparently, Wolf-Seers have extensive education requirements. I barely survived channeling the power once, Clara said. How am I supposed to? Not alone. Richard's hand found hers again. That's what the dual bond means. We're stronger together than apart. Your magic feeds mine. Mine protects yours. That's how it's supposed to work. Clara looked at their joined hands. At the man who'd been her enemy, her captor, her king. Who'd become something else entirely in the space of a few desperate days. I'm terrified, she admitted quietly. Good. Richard's smile widened slightly. That means you're paying attention. Fear keeps you sharp. Alive. He squeezed her hand once, then released it. Rest now. Tomorrow, we begin the real work. But tonight, just rest. He stood to leave, but Clara caught his sleeve. Richard. Thank you. For protecting me. For believing what I saw. He looked down at her, silver eyes unreadable. I should be thanking you. You gave me back the part of myself I thought was lost forever. He paused. Sleep well, Clara Powell. Wolf-Seer to the crown. The woman who broke the unbreakable curse. He left, closing the door softly behind him. Clara lay in the darkness, listening to rain and her own heartbeat. The heart pulsed gently against her chest, warm and alive. And through the dual bond, she could feel Richard somewhere in the castle, settling into his own rest. They'd survived the betrayal. The assassination. The curse. But Clara knew this was just the beginning. There would be more threats. More visions. More impossible choices. For the first time, though, she wouldn't face them alone. The heart pulsed once more, then settled into quiet contentment. The storm outside began to fade. And Clara finally slept. 3 days after the attack, Clara stood before the ruins of the throne room and tried to comprehend the destruction. The chamber that had once been the heart of the Leaken kingdom was a gutted shell. Scorch marks blackened the walls where Wolf-Fire had burned. The throne itself, that massive carved seat that had held generations of kings, was cracked down the middle, one of its stone wolves missing its head. Blood still stained the floor in places, dark and permanent despite the servants' best efforts to scrub it clean. This was what betrayal looked like. What conspiracy and greed had wrought. They're saying it was divine judgment. Clara turned to find Magistrate Clara approaching, her robes pristine despite the ash that still drifted through the air. The older woman's expression was thoughtful as she surveyed the damage. Divine judgment? Clara asked. The wolf-fire that destroyed the traitors but left the loyal untouched. The curse breaking at the moment of greatest need. You, appearing with the heart after 2 centuries. Ilara's eyes found Clara's. The common people are calling it fate. Destiny intervening to save the kingdom. It wasn't destiny. It was desperation and luck. Perhaps they're the same thing. Clara gestured to the ruined throne room. Richard has called a gathering for noon. All surviving nobles, the city merchants, representatives from each territory. He's going to address the kingdom publicly for the first time since the attack. Clara's stomach clenched. He hasn't said what he plans to announce. No. Ilara's slight smile suggested she knew anyway. But I suspect you'll want to be presentable for it. Which was how Clara found herself, 2 hours later, dressed in robes far finer than anything she'd ever owned. Deep blue silk embroidered with silver wolves. The heart of the first pack hung openly around her neck, no more hiding, no more pretending it didn't exist. The crack through its center had darkened over the past 3 days, but the stone still pulsed with warmth against her skin. Weaker than before, yes. But alive. Healing, perhaps, in its own way. A knock at her door. It's time, Richard's voice called from the other side. Clara opened the door to find him dressed in full royal regalia. Black armor inlaid with silver, a fur cloak that made his shoulders look impossibly broad, and, for the first time since she'd known him, a crown. Simple, elegant, forged from dark metal and set with stones that caught the light like captured stars. He looked every inch the Wolf King. You're wearing the crown, she observed. The kingdom needs symbols right now. Stability. Strength. His silver eyes swept over her appearance, and something flickered in their depths. Approval? You look like what you are. Finally. And what's that? Someone who belongs at a king's side. He offered his arm. Come. They're waiting. The throne room had been transformed. What couldn't be repaired had been cleared away. What remained had been polished and lit with 1,000 candles that turned the damaged chamber into something almost beautiful. Like a scar that had become art. Every surviving noble was present. Merchants in their finest clothes. Territory representatives who traveled for days to be here. And at the back, commoners, citizens allowed into the royal chamber for the first time in living memory. They all turned as Richard entered with Clara at his side. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Clara felt hundreds of eyes tracking her movement, saw the recognition on faces as they noted the heart hanging openly around her neck. Richard led her not to the side of the chamber where she expected to stand, but directly before the cracked throne. He released her arm and turned to face the assembled kingdom. 3 days ago, he began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the vast space, traitors attacked this chamber. They came with poison and dark magic. With assassins hired from foreign kingdoms and conspiracies forged in shadow. He paused, letting the weight of it settle. For members of my council betrayed their oaths. 17 guards sold their loyalty to the highest bidder. And for 3 years before that attack, I carried a curse designed to cripple me. To make me weak enough to kill. The crowd murmured. Some of this they'd heard through rumors. But hearing it confirmed by their king made it real. I survived, Richard continued, not through my own strength, but through the courage of one person. A village healer who stumbled into destiny carrying a relic she'd been told to bury and forget. His eyes found Clara. Clara J. Powell gave everything to break an unbreakable curse. She nearly died channeling magic she'd never been trained to use. And when I asked her why risk death for a king she barely knew, she said, because the kingdom needs you. He stepped down from the dais. Not toward the nobles or merchants or territory representatives. Toward Clara. And then Richard S. Schreiber, Wolf King of the Leaken Kingdom, knelt before her. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Clara's heart stopped. Kings didn't kneel. Not to anyone. Not ever. For 50 years, Richard said quietly, though his voice still carried to every corner, I've rejected every offering brought before this throne. Jewels, weapons, treaties, alliances. Even marriages proposed by the finest houses in the realm. He looked up at Clara, silver eyes blazing with something that looked almost like vulnerability. Every gift meant nothing to me. Every tribute felt like manipulation. Another attempt to buy influence or power or access to the crown. He reached for her hand. Clara let him take it, too shocked to resist. Until you, Richard continued. You, who tried to hide what you carried. Who wanted nothing from me except to be left alone. Who gave everything despite having no reason to trust me, no reason to believe I was worth saving. His hand tightened around hers. Of all the offerings ever brought to this throne, yours was the only one I could not reject. Because it wasn't given to buy favor or forge alliance. It was given freely. Without condition. Without expectation of reward. The heart blazed between them. Clara gasped as it rose from her chest, lifting on its chain until it hovered in the air between her and Richard. Light poured from the cracked stone, not the violent explosion of before, but something gentler. Warmer. Ancient magic swirled around them both, visible to every person in the chamber. Clara felt it settle into her skin like ink being tattooed. She looked down and watched as the sigil of the Wolf-Seers formed on her left wrist, a wolf's head crowned with thorns, rendered in silver light that gradually solidified into something permanent. Richard's right wrist bore a matching mark. Not identical, but complementary. A wolf's head crowned with stars. The dual bond made visible. Made official. The court watched in absolute silence as the heart completed its work, then settled gently back against Clara's chest. The light faded, leaving only the marks on their wrists glowing softly. The heart has chosen, Magistrate Alara announced from somewhere in the crowd. As it was in the ancient days. The Wolf-Seer and the Wolf King, bound by destiny and magic. Two souls meant to rule as one. Richard stood, still holding Clara's hand. I'm offering you a choice, Clara Powell. Not as king to subject. Not as master to servant. His voice dropped, meant only for her though the entire kingdom was listening. As a man to a woman who's become more important to me than I thought anyone could be. Stand with me. Not behind me. Not beneath me. Beside me. Clara stared at him, her mind racing. This wasn't what she'd expected. Wasn't what she'd wanted when she'd set out to bury her mother's secret. But standing here, marked by ancient magic, bound to a king who'd learned to trust despite every lesson telling him not to, Clara realized her mother might have been wrong about one thing. Some fates weren't curses. Some were gifts in disguise. I'm a village healer, she said softly. I don't know how to rule. How to navigate court politics or make decisions that affect thousands of lives. Neither did I, once. Richard's slight smile held understanding. We'll learn together. Make mistakes together. Face whatever comes next together. His thumb brushed across the new mark on her wrist. That's what the dual bond means. We're stronger as two than we ever could be as one. Clara looked past him at the assembled kingdom. At nobles who'd plotted against their king. At merchants who depended on royal protection. At commoners who deserved leaders who actually cared whether they lived or died. And she thought about the visions she'd seen. The threats still lurking in shadow. The future that needed protecting. She thought about her mother, who'd run from this fate and spent 2 centuries hiding. Clara chose differently. Yes, she said clearly, her voice carrying through the throne room. I'll stand beside you. The chamber erupted into sound. Some cheering. Some protesting. But Richard didn't seem to hear any of it. His eyes stayed locked on Clara's as he raised their joined hands. Then I present to you, he announced, Clara J. Powell. Wolf-Seer to the crown. Bearer of the heart. And my chosen partner in all things. He pulled her close, and Clara felt the dual bond surge between them, not painful now, but warm. Complete. Like 2 pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. Thank you, Richard murmured against her ear. For being the one offering I couldn't refuse. Clara laughed, actually laughed, despite everything. I was trying to bury it, remember? Hardly an offering. The best gifts are the ones people try to hide. Richard pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. They're the ones given without agenda. Without manipulation. The ones that come from people too honest to play political games. The heart pulsed once against Clara's chest, as if agreeing. As the crowd slowly dispersed, nobles approaching to offer congratulations or assess the new power dynamic, Clara felt the weight of what she'd agreed to settle over her shoulders. This was just the beginning. There would be more threats. More conspiracies. More impossible choices and visions that showed futures she'd have to work to prevent. But she wouldn't face them alone. Richard's hand stayed clasped in hers as they navigated the sea of well-wishers and schemers. And through the dual bond, she felt his steady certainty. His quiet strength. They'd saved each other. Now they'd save the kingdom. Together. The mark on Clara's wrist glowed softly, a permanent reminder that some destinies couldn't be buried, no matter how hard you tried. And some were worth accepting, even when they terrified you. Of all the gifts brought to the Wolf King over 50 years, only one had ever been worthy. The girl who tried to hide hers behind her back. The girl who'd become the woman standing beside a throne, marked by ancient magic, bound by destiny. The girl who'd learned that sometimes, the fate you run from is the one you were always meant to embrace. Drop a comment and tell me, would you accept a destiny like Clara's, or would you run like her mother did? And what threats do you think are still lurking in the shadows of the Leaken Kingdom? This might be the end of Clara and Richard's beginning, but I have a feeling their story is far from over. Hit that like button and subscribe because if you want to see what happens next, what new enemies emerge, what the cracked heart means for their future, and whether Clara can truly master her Wolf-Seer abilities, you won't want to miss it. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Until next time, keep believing in the power of choices, destiny, and the magic that happens when 2 people refuse to give up on each other.